Hi, my name is Vicky Lunt. I'm a qualified play therapist and this is the first video I've ever made. So it's quite amateur, but I have been asked to share some ideas and useful tips through a supportive video in how we can better manage stress and anxiety at this time for our children. So if you are worried about your child, then do seek a qualified mental health professional. So play therapy is a form of child psychotherapy, and we do use a variety of different play and creative art techniques to alleviate chronic, mild and moderate psychological and emotional conditions in children that cause behavioural difficulties. So all the links that I make reference to can be found on my Facebook page at the end of the video, and also via my website, which I will leave a link to at the end of my video. So I'm no film bod. I don't profess to be, but I will do my very best in answering some of the questions that parents have asked me, and offer daily updates via my Facebook page. So firstly, the title of this video is how to manage stress and anxiety for our children. I've had children and parents express their stress and worry and hypervigilance at this moment in time. So firstly, all your responses are completely normal given the circumstance and warranted given the news and all the social media coverage. So a little bit about trauma, I think that's an important place to start. Our nervous system is always assessing our environment for proposed safety and danger. So if it senses a threat to our safety, it will help us focus on it so that we can take action against a threat if needed. It actually keeps us alive. So if we're always on the lookout for something or someone who could harm us, then we're prepared to act when that threat becomes imminent. But because this threat is a virus that has affected the most vulnerable, there's no known treatment yet. We don't know when it will invade our communities, and we aren't able to use our fight or flight response in an effective way. We can't fight and we can't run from the coronavirus like we can from a big scary bear. So we have a nervous system that's gearing up for action, but without having any outlet for that energy. Therefore, we can feel really agitated and ramped up and anxious each day. Perhaps that's what's caused so many people to stockpile toilet roll. So I wasn't able to find anything on the shelves tonight. So what can we do to help children if we do need to self-isolate? Because being in a prolonged state of threat can cause people to make poor decisions, siblings can bicker, parents argue, or children and parents feel socially isolated or go into a state of freeze. So when children are anxious, even the most well-meaning parents can fall into a negative cycle, and not wanting their child to suffer can actually exacerbate a child's anxiety. So it happens when parents anticipate a child's fears and then try to protect her from them. So here are some of the pointers for helping children escape the cycle of anxiety. Number one, the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety, but it's to help a child manage it. None of us want to see a child unhappy, but the best way to help a child overcome anxiety isn't trying to remove the stresses that trigger it, it's to help them learn to tolerate their anxiety and function as well as they can, even when they are anxious. And as a byproduct of that, the anxiety will decrease or fall away over time. So some of the symptoms might be anxious, a little bit edgy, nervous, agitated. They might have difficulty concentrating. They refuse to go to school. They've got difficulty with their work. Some are angry quite quickly. They can't sleep. They won't sleep in their own beds. They're startled by noises. They won't talk about what's happened, or they talk excessively about what's happened. They become very dependent, and they're clingy to their parents or their caretakers, and then they fear separations. So I will leave a list of all of those. Number 2 is don't avoid things just because they make the child anxious. So helping children avoid the things that they're afraid of will make them feel better in the short term, but it actually reinforces the anxiety over a long time. So if a child in an uncomfortable situation gets upset and then they start to cry, not to be manipulative, but just because that's how they feel, and her parents then whisk her out of there or remove the thing that she's afraid of, she's then learnt that coping mechanism, and that cycle has the potential to then repeat itself. So going back to school will then be hard. Number 3, express positive but realistic expectations. You can't promise a child that his fears are unrealistic. That won't be, if he's sent home, he's sent home. That you may have to make some decisions on a daily schedule for homework, and you will have to limit screen time. Maybe, it's grandparents that they're not able to then come to their grandchild's birthday party now. They are all real fears and likely to happen. But you can express confidence that he's going to be okay, and he will be able to manage it. And that, as he faces his fears, the anxiety level will drop over time. This gives him confidence, and that your expectations are realistic, and that you're not going to ask him to do anything that he can't handle. Number 4, respect her feelings, but don't empower them. Okay, so it's important to understand that validation doesn't always mean agreement. So if a child is terrified, you don't want to belittle their fears. But if you also don't want to then amplify them either. So you want to listen and be empathetic, help her understand that she's anxious, what she's anxious about, and then encourage her to feel that she can face her fears head on. The message you want to send is, I know you're scared, and that's okay. I'm here, and I'm going to help you get through this. Number 5, don't ask leading questions. So encourage your child to talk about his feelings, but don't try to ask any leading questions. So like, are you anxious about germs? Are you worried about grandma? So to avoid feeding into the cycle of anxiety, perhaps you can ask just open-ended questions like, how are you feeling about staying home? Number 6, don't reinforce the child's fears. What you don't want to do is just saying with your tone of voice or your body, maybe this is something that you should be afraid of. Let's say a child has a negative experience with a dog. The next time she's around a dog, you then might get anxious about how she'll respond. And so you might unintentionally send a message that she should indeed be worried. We want to build resilience in a time like this, not panic. So number 7, the child, to tolerate her anxiety, we need to encourage the child to tolerate the anxiety. So that's going to be number 7. Let your child know that you appreciate the work it takes to tolerate anxiety in order to do what he wants or needs to do. So this is a really encouraging him to engage in life and to let the anxiety take its natural curve. So we call it the habitual curve, and it will drop over time as he continues to have contact with the stressor. It may not drop to 0, and it may not drop as quickly as you would like, but that's how we get over our fears. Number 8, do try to keep the anticipation period short. When we're afraid of something, the hardest time is really before we do it. So another rule of thumb for parents is to really try to eliminate or reduce the anticipation period. So if a child is nervous about not seeing their friends, or they have to do social distancing, then you don't want to launch into a discussion about it during the drive to school. That's likely to get your child more worried. So number 9 is think things through with your child. So sometimes it helps to talk through what would happen if a child's fear came true. How would she handle it? So just try to shorten that period to a minimum and later discuss it around around like the dinner table as a family, and let children find solutions to this. And perhaps you can telephone or FaceTime friends and relatives. Number 10, try to model healthy ways of handling anxiety. There are multiple ways you can help children handle anxiety by letting them see how you cope with anxiety yourself. Children are really perceptive. They're going to take it in if you're keeping complaining on the phone to a friend, for example, that you can't handle the stress or the anxiety of the virus and the impacts. And I'm not saying to pretend that you don't have the stress and anxiety. We're all feeling it. But let our children hear or see you managing it calmly as possible, that you're tolerating it, that you're feeling good about getting through it, whether it's with our schools, our teachers, our neighbours and our community. And it's been phenomenal. Someone told me today that if you put out a red tea towel out your letterbox, that is a sign to say to anyone passing by that you need some help. And it's just coming up with wonderful things like that it restores your faith in people and it brings everyone together, and it's really lovely. It's something that I'm really taking heed of, and so let's share our ideas, let's all pull together, and think of ways that we can stick to as much of a normal routine, as fun activities for our children to promote the emotional and mental well-being. So maybe that's art or yoga, mindfulness, creative visualizations, playing with sand, puppets, water, maybe making the wonderful slime. I don't know if you've made that with PVA, but I'll leave an ingredients list, and just doing puzzles together as a family, and dancing, staying physically active, and getting enough rest and sleep and eating well. So that's it, guys. I've done as much as possible during this video, and I know I haven't covered everything, but I think it's a time to reach out. And if you would like to discover more about play therapy and gain any support, or make a referral, feel free via the website, which is www.intoplaytherapy.co.uk. All right, thanks everyone.